2, 1. Say the line, Jack.
It hasn't aged the best.
Yeah,
Yay.
that's our show. We just wanted him to say that. Just kidding. Today's episode, we're going to talk about a little thing that unfortunately some older games are very guilty of now. So the gaming industry, the games as a whole, have been around for like what, 45-ish years as we know them, at least. Which means that not every game you can pick up and play and it like is as good of a game as when it came out. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about games that have not aged the best, as Jack likes to say.
It's true. I do like to say it.
So we're kind of going to just spitball some examples we can kind of like talk about off the top of our head. We'll get into some more specific ones, but I think a really good place to start would just be don't mind my cat, would just be a lot of NES games, especially the ones that were made earlier on that are like more made as like arcadey titles. So like stuff like your Ice Climber, your NES Golf, and a lot of games that came out at that time that were meant to just kind of be played as like a small burst. Because the thing is I noticed these games were kind of made as like they weren't made to be home console games. They were made to be like arcade games you could play at home. Because like arcade games were like the big thing at the time in the 80s. Like the arcades were all over the place in the 80s. So when they were making games for stuff like the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System, and the Sega Master System and some other systems, the Atari 2600, of course, a lot of the games that you were going to play were like these like really like just small games that were either, you know, arcade style or very hard or both. And I'm sure you guys have probably played some number of these games. I mean, they had a bunch on like different virtual console systems. There was like Balloon Fight, the original, not Super Mario Brothers, but Mario Brothers and stuff like that.
I've heard of these games, yes.
These games do exist.
Yeah, they tell me they exist.
Have you
Wikipedia has them on a list of games that perchance released.
Probably exist. There's a
Yeah.
solid chance that these games are in fact real and came out at one point in time.
Have you guys not played the cultural phenomenon that is Balloon Fight on your Nintendo 3DS?
I have.
Unfortunately, right?
Yep.
Man, it's fine. It's Balloon Fight.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, because it's like, so the way that game works and the way that some of these other games work is that like it's pretty much meant to just be a like fun little 2-player game. And it's literally just like you do one thing. In Balloon Fight, you're trying to knock out the other guy's balloons. And or like in the case of Mario Brothers, you're, you know, trying to jump on the things under, and you've got this enclosed space and you're trying to get more points than the other guy. And you have just like all these kinds of games that are just like that, and that's it. That's the whole game. Like you could put that on like a little toy nowadays and still play with someone else, I'm sure.
Are you saying there's something wrong with Tetris?
I'm saying you could put Tetris on a small toy and it would still work. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying that they made entire like cartridge-based games that go in your NES machine.
Well, they did that with other games too.
Yeah.
To put in your, I don't know, your Super Nintendo machine.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have had more experience with like other games, but I grew up on like quite a few of those like arcadey games, because I think I mentioned this at like some other not so far back podcast.
I will say I was too young to really experience a lot of like NES and SNES growing up, but I did have something that allowed me to experience a lot of old literal arcade games, the Jack's Pacific plug and play titles.
Ew.
Yeah,
Gross.
I had
That's the good shit.
at least a few of those as a child, and yeah,
I'm
had
sorry.
one for Pac-Man, had one for Ms. Pac-Man, had one for fucking SpongeBob. That's irrelevant, but either way, I was able to experience like a good selection of like very old arcade games, and even at like a very young age, I was thinking to myself, this old game hasn't aged the best.
Are you
Not,
saying
I mean, like,
Pac-Man has not
I'm-
aged the best?
I don't mean Pac-Man specifically. I mean like just, any like other like game that are just like they're, gameplay wise they're very primitive and they're like, simple arcade titles that like still play fine, but there's just like not a lot to them.
Yeah, I'll put it this way, like I don't mind these games. I still like to like pick up like Namco Museum and like play the games on that. But that's the thing. If it's just the game by itself, just the one game, I'm probably not touching it. But if there's like a collection of a bunch of games, I can just kind of pick and choose which ones I want to play at the time. That by itself will lure me in some amount. I think that like those kind of games, like you can't really just release them like on their own unless it's like one of those like little novelty toys that you buy for like $10 and it's like a keychain that you can just like clip and just like take with you. But like I'll buy like Namco Museum. I've had like multiple different like I've actually owned like multiple different Namco Museums. One on the GameCube, one on the PS1. There was like a Taito Legend, like Taito collection of like old Atari and arcade games from Taito that I had for Xbox like way back in the day that I played a bunch of games off of that. I don't even know it was on that. I can look that up while we talk about the next game. I want to throw it to you, Jack, though, because this is your line.
Yeah.
So you got a good example of a game that has not aged the best, or a subset
All
of
right.
games?
There's a lot of different ways that a game hasn't aged the best. If that sentence makes any sense. I know it doesn't.
Hasn't aged the best.
Yes,
So
that is what
hasn't
I said.
aged the best is a verb?
Yes, it is. Anyway,
Okay.
it's what happens when a game hasn't aged the best. But
Okay.
anyway, there's a lot of different ways that a game could age poorly over time, whether it be visually, control-wise, maybe the gameplay is just a little bit lackluster, maybe the story sucks, and maybe the voice acting isn't as good as you remember. The content
is very dated because they
Yeah.
use leet speak.
Oh,
Looking at you,
yes.
Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney.
Shout out to the English translation of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, where there was Team Galactic grunts saying stuff like being owned and like other like late 2000s like internet speak.
Yep.
That was great.
Thank you to every video game that did that came out in the late aughts. Good job.
Good job.
Anyway, I'm gonna throw out an example that comes to mind a lot when I think of hasn't aged the best, and a lot of people would probably disagree with me. Super Mario 64. Controls are
Super
poopy.
Mario 64,
The
baby.
controls in that game are not very good. Like on original hardware, like it plays pretty decently. And like it's not, I mean, obviously the game was like tailored for the controller because, it was only released on that system. They weren't thinking about what it would be on in the future. But like playing Mario 64 today, it's very slippery, and like controlling Mario in a 3D plane would become much more smooth in the future. Like even like just as far forward as Super Mario Sunshine, like it's much better to control.
I get what you're saying, because like so like going back to Super Mario 64, like he controls it's weird. He feels a little heavy when he runs because he's got a slow start, and then he's a little slippery. Like he doesn't really stop on a dime like a lot of like later platformers would do with like their controls. He like kind of slides just a little bit forward, and I think that kind of control scheme worked in like back in the day because it was kind of realistic. Like if you start running, you're going to have like a bit of a slow start and then you won't really stop. And that was just kind of like intuitive for people when back in the day when they played a game for it to control like that. But nowadays it's more like when we play games, we expect the controls to control in a way that like in the game it makes more sense than in real life being translated into a game momentum wise.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like comparing like Mario Odyssey and Super Mario 64, the way they control, it's like it's night and day.
Yeah. It's like just momentum, physics, controls. It's all very different, despite being mechanically very similar.
Right. Is there
what
anything
about
else
you?
about Mario 64 that you feel is like kind of like a little
I don't know. I
dated?
mean, like I will say like the level design is pretty good for the most part, but I will say like it was very like I mean, you know, it was basically the blueprint for 3D platformers. So like for it being pretty much the first one, like you kind of forgive it for not having the greatest level design.
Yeah,
But
because
like
the scope is kind of small, right? Like you can feel you're
yeah,
in like
it's
you can feel you're in like a in like a skybox with objects in it.
yeah. And to that effect, it can feel a little bare. Like some like worlds just don't really feel like they're just not super exciting to explore. Maybe I mean I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass. But like honestly, like I don't know. Some like also I think some levels just are designed poorly. I don't care for Rainbow Ride.
Yeah, Rainbow Ride's kind of clunky, and like because of the controls, it feels like you can't you can't maneuver it
It's
as well as it I would like at least.
not only that, but just like being forced to ride the carpet to like
Yeah.
each location just to do like a certain mission, and you have to listen to the slide music the whole time.
One thing,
um,
one level that was never like I was never really big on, especially trying to go back to it, is Lethal Lava Land, because
yeah,
the way that like the way that the physics work, like if you fall in the lava, it feels so different. Like he has the same animation of him shooting up and like holding onto his ass as it's on fire as like other
you have
games.
like
He
you
yeah,
have like less control over it when he falls
exactly.
in. Yeah.
And with the moving platforms, you also just don't quite have like it doesn't feel like you have the fine control that you need to in order to like get from certain platforms, because there's like some really thin and small platforms in that level
Yeah.
and in a couple of the Bowser levels as well.
Yeah, like precision platforming in like in a big open field, like Mario 64 controls well because you don't need to do too much like too many like precise jumps. But once you get to like the more like you know, the smaller platforms and the more like precision platforming, it's harder to control because the way Mario's momentum works makes it like very awkward to try and land on like smaller spaces.
Yeah. Shout out to speedrunners of Mario 64, because there's no fucking way I could control the game as well as they do.
Those people are like scientists,
Yeah.
honestly. Like I don't know how they do it, but
Uh
it's very impressive.
Landon, you actually had brought up a very specific game that I wasn't 100% certain if it would get brought up on the podcast, but I kind of am interested in what you got to say about it. Before we started recording anyway, you had mentioned this game. So there's an old NES game you wanted to talk about. Do you want to throw that guy out there? That gal out there,
Um,
rather?
Sorry, I'm still reeling at the fact that you would not pay $70 for a copy of Pac-Man on your Nintendo Switch. Crazy.
I did not say those exact words.
Not you, Cloud.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean those weren't my exact words, but I did say I would not buy a game like that by itself nowadays. So
I know that you guys spoke about a game just now for like 10 minutes. I don't even know what you guys were talking about. What are we doing? We're talking
Has-
about, you want me to
hasn't
talk
aged
about
the
a game?
best.
yeah,
Hasn't aged the best? Oh, do you want to fuck off?
no, I'm in the middle of a
wanna
podcast. Actually, no,
Leave? Want to go?
I
Clean your eyeball.
I gotta stay right here for the podcast. Actually,
Okay. I'll clean his eyeball later. Metroid. The first Metroid was the game I had brought up.
whoa.
I don't know why that's surprising. Why?
I was gonna say it's
I
not
don't.
surprising.
I'm not.
That's
surprised.
like, that is like cookie cutter, like, hasn't aged the best. Its level design is dog shit because everything looks the same. You have so many vertical corridors that is literally just the same thing repeated over and over. And that's on purpose. They did that to save room on the NES cartridge.
yeah.
So they just restamped things. And so if you try to play the game today without a guide, good luck. I don't know if you're going to find anywhere to go. You're basically just going to be mapping out the whole game yourself. And I mean, like, the shot types and stuff is very, like, it's very limited as far as like options. The platforming is very slippery. It's not one to really go back to unless you like are just a Metroid fan. If you like Metroid, at that point you can give it a shot, but like I've played the game more than once, and I mean I will say the same thing about Zelda 2. That's another NES game that I feel like has not aged super well.
True.
Due to like just design choices for that, like the level design in that, especially some of the enemies are really dumb.
Yeah, because like
But like Death Mountain,
some of the
is, like,
enemies are just
gross.
like literally too small to hit, like with your just like regular swinging.
or like their attack patterns are like insane.
Yeah,
Like what you have to do in order to like get past them, without like just straight up cheesing that game is crazy. The if you die, you go back. Like so the places you go back is like awful. It has a life system for a Zelda game, which is dumb.
Yeah.
It's like it's another one that like if you are a fan of the series, check it out. But like it's not something I would like say absolutely needs to be played. And then
I-
there's games in those same like those from like the older generation that I would say, yeah, absolutely go ahead and play it. But yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean,
But
I
those
you're
are
going
two
to
examples
interject,
where it's
Jack.
just like you don't need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to play both of those games before. I never did beat either one of them. I liked what I played of Metroid 1, but I will say, yeah, like a lot of it is like very samey. So like it's really easy to get lost. And that's sort of something I want to like keep like talking about is that some of the problems with these earlier games that have not aged the best is they were designed with the idea that you will get lost and you will have to take time to figure out what you're doing or look it up or like call like a hotline back in the day in order to figure out what you're doing or get like a special like Nintendo Power guide or something,
Or literally make your own map.
or make your own map sort of thing.
Get grid paper and draw out a map.
Exactly. So like they made the games with that sort of like lack of information and needing to just figure that stuff out on your own in mind. One game that even on the simpler side of things, the when it first came out, it was like it was one of those games where like there's a lot of like information you just do not have that you just kind of have to know. Would actually be, and I'm only gonna talk about these for a brief moment because I've talked about them enough. But the original Pokemon games, Red and Blue, they have so little information, and this is like a stand-in for like a lot of early RPGs.
Yes.
That there's like lots of different attacks that you can use, abilities you can use, that until you use them, you have no idea what they do. So like whether you're playing like old school Final Fantasy or you're playing Pokemon Red and Blue and you're trying to use Ember or Fire, and then you're trying to use like Flamethrower or Fire 2, like the only thing you know is that it has a type. The only thing you know is that based on the name, it does something. And then you just kind of have to figure out, is this one stronger? Is that one stronger? It's a little easier in Final Fantasy because they just have Fire 1, 2, and 3 if you were playing the English versions back in the day. So, but like still you would only have like a vague idea of what something did. And in Pokemon it's really bad because they use different names for the moves and you don't have an idea of how strong it is. You don't have an idea of how accurate it is because accuracy is like a big deal for moves in those games. And you don't know if the move you're going to learn when the Pokemon's like, hey, you want to teach this new move is going to be better than a previous move until you delete one of your other moves and then try it out and then learn the hard way that, okay, maybe that move I just learned is not actually good. And the movesets were pretty bad.
My favorite from like early RPGs is like equipment and item names, knowing what they do. Because a lot of them have if they have descriptions, it is beyond vague, and you don't know exactly like what it improves or who can equip it. So you have to like risk it, buy the item, see if anyone can even equip it, and then be like, well, oh well.
Yep. That is something. So like as much as I love this game, and I'm also going to couple a game I started playing a little bit of that is extremely similar, is Phantasy Star 4.
Phantasy Star.
Yeah, like as much as I love that game, the techniques are not named in a way that you would have any idea what they do until you do them.
Nope.
Like how are you supposed to know that the spell Foy is a damaging fire spell until you use it? Unless you have a Brooklyn accent and you always say fire as Foya, or
Foya.
Like unless you know how, unless you just kind of know that, you're not going to know that's a fire spell until you use it. And like Res, you would think that that's a resurrection spell, right? No, that's actually just your regular healing spell. Like that is your cure or your heal in like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest kind of games we're talking about. Okay, sure. And then you have to like learn because unlike the earlier Final Fantasies, which actually just use numbers, which is actually kind of better, in Phantasy Star you need to learn that like stuff like prefixes like na and stuff like that are supposed to be like higher tier or like all like spread across like a party, and it's just that. And then like you said, the equipment, like you don't know what the equipment does until you equip it, and it'll just change the numbers on your status screen. You're like, oh okay, that's what that does. Like you have no idea until you get it. It's so like playing it now it's fine because I can just look that information up if I really wanted to. And Final Fantasy, Phantasy Star 4 is at least designed in a way that like if you get something new, the chances are good it is better than whatever the fuck you have already. So like you don't have to like do too much guesswork that, oh, this is better than the other thing I have, because it's a much more linear game. But if you're playing something like Phantasy Star 2, that is much more like not at quite as like, it's like a lot more open and like you can kind of wander around and get lost. Like I had, if I didn't have a guide, like I started playing that, I've only played for like 5 hours so far and I'm like about to start the second dungeon. If I had no guide, I'd have no idea what the fuck I was doing.
See, that's why you were supposed to get it with the ground map.
Yeah, ground map.
True.
I forgot about ground map.
Never forget ground map.
Never forget ground map. Oh my god, that took me back.
That is the game where that, like, because when I purchased a copy of Final Phantasy Star 2.
I forgot about
I,
that.
I got a copy that came with the original ground map. So I busted that shit out. Still, nothing made sense. I was like, what the fuck is anything? Where is anything?
And yet, we would always consult the ground map.
You
In
have to
time-
consult the ground map.
In
God.
times of worry, in times of question, consult the ground map.
Bust out your ground map. Let's
It was
go.
one of the holy items of God Knuckles.
It was.
God.
It's fantastic.
I forgot that was Phantasy Star 2. I'm glad we brought this up. Shout out to the ground map. That is a deep cut and an old Gaming Stooges thing.
Almost as old as the channel.
Oh yeah, it was a really early thing. All right, but yeah, basically, I just want to I brought those games up because I want to press more on the whole vagueness of early games. That is something that really hurts early games, especially RPGs, and I mean Metroid as well. You know, Zelda. Zelda is designed around it, so like it gets away with it a lot more than other games. But like the whole idea that like you have no idea what you're doing, and that's what they wanted from the player, is to not know what they were doing.
I think specifically Zelda 2 is like the bigger culprit of not having aged the best. I still think Zelda 1 is like an easier game to get into, even if it's stupid easy to get lost.
Right.
But because that game is way more designed around that, whereas
Right.
Zelda 2 is set up quite a bit more linear, and
It's still
therefore
very easy
like
to get lost.
still very easy to get lost.
It helps that it helps that Zelda 1, because of the fact that the series outside of Zelda 2, which is a totally different kind of game altogether, it's a puzzle. It's a puzzle. It has puzzle aspects to its adventure gameplay, and like you get dropped in with like, and the game is like kind of already hinting to you are going to have to figure things out. So it's not like and like it kind of tries to ease you around, like it tries to make things makes enough sense. Like still there's going to be moments where like you get like the candle to like light fires, and like you have to still figure out where you're going to use that to unlock stuff, but they give some hints here and there, so it's like it is designed better. But yeah, Zelda 2 is a totally different kind of game, and it still has extremely vague things about it.
Yep. Like everyone likes to meme on I am error.
Oh yeah,
because that was like a poor translation, but then also like that actually means something later on in the game.
Yeah.
Yep. Jack, did you have anything to build off of that, or did you have a totally different example to throw us with?
You mentioned Pokemon earlier. I was going to give an example of something having not aged the best from a game that I like. Game that I really like. Because now saying having not aged the best can like it can really happen like in just I guess in hindsight in a lot of cases.
Yeah,
because
you might not feel it in the moment.
Yeah, but
you
like
really gotta look back and kind of observe it.
Trying to think of a good way to bring up the fact that I hate that in the first 3 generations you have limited bag space. Did they still have that in Gen 4 or was it Gen 5 that they threw? Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I thought it was Gen 4 that they got rid of that. But like, if they had stuck with limited bag space throughout the whole series, then it's suddenly not a thing that hasn't aged the best, but I guess it's just a matter of like how limited the bag space is. Either way, I was gonna say like in Gen 3, my favorite generation, that is a thing, and I hate that. But also, it's worse in earlier generations.
Yeah, so just to kind of like build off of that real quick, like a quality of life improvements over time for a series will make older games feel like they haven't aged quite as well because they don't have those features. One such game I can definitely say, and thankfully re-releases would add this feature from the later games in, is Sonic 1 and the lack of spin dash. Try playing Sonic 1 with no spin dash. that shit is fucked. I'm not doing that anymore. I have the Sonic Origins release. I have the mobile version release that added it. Don't play Sonic Genesis on GBA. That shit sucks. But like, just the re-releases that added the spin dash just make it so much more playable. And I learned that the hard way when I decided I wanted to play Sonic 1 through the Genesis Classics collection on the Switch, Sega Genesis Classics, because it is literally just the Genesis ROM, which has no spin dash. And you can play it. That doesn't make it a bad game. It's just that you will feel it every time you would come across a section where it's like, God, I wish I just could just spin dash up this hill. God damn it. And you just can't. You have to run back, build up momentum, and run up.
Yep.
GG. Landon, did you have anything that was like similar to that you can think of? I'm sure that like you've talked about Metroid. I'm sure like what is there something about like games that like later in the series like add that the original like doesn't have? Maybe like a map.
Why do you keep bringing this back to me? Why do you want me to participate? I thought I was just supposed to sit here and stare at the camera
And play Yeast
for an hour and a
Nordic.
half. I really wish I was. Games that get disqualified by future versions by having a quality of life feature.
Have you ever played like the not so I know you played the first game in the series, but did you ever play the NES original Dragon Warrior?
Oh no, I haven't. That would be really rough to go back to. Going back to the NES or Famicom game.
I tried playing it and like it is so clunky by today's standards.
Yeah,
so clunky.
I'm so thankful that they did the mobile like remake, essentially remake. That's what it is. It's an enhanced port that adds a save feature, a quick save feature, and then like redoes like stats and stuff. So because they added that, and then they threw that on like Switch and PC and some other things. Like I was able to play that and not have to go through the original version. So there's that. I mean, the sad thing is like, I mean, yes, without like some of the like quality of life features, Dragon Quest 1 playing that on original hardware is rough.
Yeah.
But the bones of the game is phenomenal. Even if it's just grind until you are like level 40 and you can just beat
30.
the boss.
30, yeah.
Yeah, whatever it is. But it's still like a fun game.
The thing that threw me off is that in order to talk to people, so like this is the case for Phantasy Star as well in a sense, but there's still a way of like shortcutting it, is that in order to talk to people, you can't just like turn to them and like talk to them. You have to stand next to them, bring up the menu, then go find the talk command and then talk to them. And that's
my favorite part.
That's the same menu that like, you go into for like your items, your equipment, all of that. You have to do that every time you want to talk to someone.
I love that. Why you have to bring up the menu if you can't just press A? Fuck you.
Got to put in the effort.
Get out of here. You need to put some effort into talking to me.
You want to talk? You better show you care first.
Yeah. But I mean those are games. I'm trying to think of another one of a game. I mean, going back to like the older Fire Emblem games can be rough because they don't have like, especially like the first one doesn't have, and the first two, Gaiden doesn't have the weapon triangle, which became like an essential part. But then you have like when they remade number 2, Shadows of Valentia, Fire Emblem Echoes, that was perfectly fine. So I don't know. It's weird.
I have the first one on the Switch when they re-released it for that limited time. Yeah. I just haven't played it yet. Have you played it?
I actually played that. Yeah. How many chapters did I get through? I think I got through 3 or 4 of the chapters in it, and I was like, "This is an NES Fire Emblem."
For sure.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. It's not a bad game, but it's one of those where if I want to play Fire Emblem, I'm just going to play a game that works
You'll play
and is enjoyable.
You'll play
and looks
anything
nice.
else except for if its name is Shadow Dragon.
Basically the same game. I would rather play the NES version over that.
Really? The remake was that bad?
I think so.
Oh,
I don't.
wow.
It's a bad remake.
You know,
Al,
a remake
shout out
is bad
in the chat.
You know a remake is bad when you like don't even want to play the remake and you just want to play the original. That's bad.
I mean, you mentioned that with the GBA version of Sonic 1.
True.
So
yeah,
true.
That one was bad on impact, though.
Yeah, true.
That was not. That wasn't an example of it hasn't aged the best. That one was just dog shit from day one.
Al agrees with me. He didn't like Shadow Dragon on DS.
And I mean, Al is a huge Fire Emblem fan, so if he says something about Fire Emblem, I take that.
He's bigger than me.
Yeah.
In both size and fanism of Fire Emblem.
Sure. Is he bigger than you? I don't know if he's actually bigger than you. Anyway,
I doubt that for some reason.
So thinking about one other thing I want to mention. One thing that like can make a game or a series of games or like a sub-series of games just not age well, especially in the PS1 era, there's games that they kind of have a sluggish pace to them because they were much more concerned about like cinematics and just like the grandeur and like the visual like look of games rather than their performance. So when you get into battles in the Final Fantasy games on the PlayStation 1, they are kind of fucking slow. That is Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9, and 9 is the worst one of the three. They run at 15 FPS, by the way, the battles. And
it's bad.
If you're playing like the originals, like the menuing is still in 60, at least for 7 and I think 8 as well. I don't remember about 9. But like that doesn't take away the fact that all of the animations are so slow and just they don't have a good feeling to them playing them. The only way I'm able to play Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 nowadays is with their like current / last gen releases, because you can get them on Steam, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and they have a speed up button, and that button is just there to make the game run faster. Everything, like if you're on the field, if you're in battles, it's just there to speed the game up. And even though it feels a little too fast at times, I'd rather that than have to watch the 15 FPS animations in battle while I'm selecting commands, and it just doesn't feel good. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know about you guys, if you guys have played any games in that era of like N64, PlayStation 1, where like you can tell like this is a game from that era because it just has a sluggishness to it.
Banjo-Tooie.
Banjo-Tooie?
If you are playing the N64 version, good luck. The frame rate is so bad. Like, it is one of the worst and most inconsistent frame rates I've ever seen in a video game. It's goes as low as like 12 in some areas. Like, it's never higher than 20, I don't think. It's not good.
And nowadays the whole debate is like 60 FPS or even more than 60 FPS for games. But like
nothing needs to be more than 60. That's stupid.
But like back in the day, you were lucky if you could get 30, my dude.
30 was a rarity on like PS1 and N64.
Yeah, I think the Spyro the Dragon games run in 30, and like it's a technical marvel that they managed to handle what they do. Like that Ape Escape, even then they still have they have a slower pace to them. They're more they're more frolicky and more like relaxed to make up for the fact that they run better, because if they have like faster stuff going on, there's no way they'd be able to handle that frame rate.
Yeah.
I don't know, Landon, do you remember playing any games that like from that era that like they don't feel as good to play because of stuff like that?
Literally any game that is not Paper Mario for the Nintendo 64.
The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time's kind of a big offender of this too. Like when you think about it.
I hate that game. That game needs to burn in hell.
Like,
God.
I mean,
specifically the crossbow on the horse.
Yeah.
Fuck that. Or I should say the bow. The archery fucking minigame with the horse. Fuck that shit. Ocarina of Time is garbage. Die.
Yeah. Like the controls for some of that stuff is like pretty bad. And like that's why the 3DS version is so good, because you could just use the gyro controls, and like the aim is actually that much better. Like gyro controls might not be perfect for some games, but like on the 3DS, it made stuff like Ocarina of Time just so much easier. So much easier. And but like with Ocarina of Time, it is so that overworld, yeah, like there's a lot of locations you can go to. It feels so empty, and it is so slow to maneuver around, and even after you get Epona, it still feels like kind of empty. Like that's just the sort of like thing that those games had to do in order to run properly. Is it just like, I don't know. You guys have played like later 3D Zelda games, so you'd probably get a better sense of like how they made that sort of situation better than I would, at least. But
I mean, Majora's Mask, literally the game that runs on the same engine, has a better.
Yeah. But like pretty much anything beyond the 64 is like fine, honestly. Like I would say like there is no like console generation that is a bigger offender of it hasn't aged the best than PS1 and 64 and Sega Saturn.
yeah.
Like the early 3D era of video games is so fucking like clunky and like, I don't want to say poorly put together, because like they were technical marvels at the time, but just like in hindsight they are bad looking.
Yeah. And like there's a lot of games, particularly on PS1. N64 thankfully didn't have to suffer from this much because of using cartridges instead. But PS1 games, they take forever to load if they have to load anything, dude. Mm-hmm. Like I went back to this one game recently and I loaded it up. And so I played it on an emulator on PC, and like it like loads like instantly because it's using the horsepower of my PC. But I went back to try to play Darkstone for the PS1. It was a PC and PS1 RPG. It's an action RPG. It usually has like an isometric view, but you can change the camera around a bit. And it's a Western RPG where you can go through dungeons and you fulfill these quests. And it's pretty open-ended, but the ultimate goal is to get strong enough to fight this evil dragon wizard at the end of the game. And the dungeons and just loading new areas, because they also break the overworld up into chunks, just loading those sections up in the original, oh my god, if you think Sonic 06's loading screens are bad, it's pretty much at that level. That's how bad that is. There's no fucking way I could play the original. I would have to play that on an emulator so I could just speed through that. There's no way. Like, loading in some PS1 games is just, my god, I don't even have words. Digimon World 3 could be like that at points too. Like I did the let's play and like I cut out all of that loading, but it can be kind of bad. And the saving also takes forever. Like if you try to like save the game in some of these games, Darkstone, Digimon World 3, like if you think the Gen 4 game Pokemon games are bad with like taking a long time to save, bless your heart, because some of those PS1 games, you are sitting there forever because it has to just save so much data to your one little dinky ass memory card. It's kind of amazing. Jack, I'm sure you have some experience with like that sort of thing, like long load times, long save times.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Boy, I'm trying to think of a specific example. The thing is, I like, my first home console was a GameCube, so like by that point, load times weren't terrible, but still had some pretty bad ones. I mean, like, I remember playing Sonic 06 when I was a kid and remembering how awful the load times were. I remember like a lot of like early 360 games had some pretty bad load times. Like nothing specific is coming to mind, but I remember like, early is that 7th gen or 8th gen?
That's 7th.
7th. A lot of early 7th gen games had pretty bad load times. Okay, you know what? This isn't even an example of it hasn't aged the best. This is just this is fucking absurd. How are the load times this bad? Fucking Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled for the Nintendo Switch. It takes like damn near a full minute to load a race. Like at least 50 seconds.
That game is only a few years old, and Jack's already talking about it on the It Hasn't Aged the Best podcast.
No, that was dog shit, like right from the get-go. Like I honestly like was turned off from playing that game at all just because of how bad the load times were. But that's a different whole topic, honestly.
Yeah. We could talk plenty about something like that.
Boy, I was gonna say something about like Sonic Heroes' controls, but honestly, those were also kind of just like not great on arrival because they were like a downgrade from the adventure games.
Well, even
the adventure games.
Yeah.
Say that.
All right, yeah, you know what? Yeah.
Those suck. Sonic... Those are donkey nut.
All right.
Say it. Those games are donkey nut.
No, you don't have to say that. You can just say the line.
We're retitling the podcast.
Donkey Nut?
Yeah.
Donkey Nut. Okay.
Donkey Nut.
Yeah. Sonic Adventure 1 has definitely not aged the best.
It's and 2.
And 2.
Don't let I would say to you.
1 worse than 2. Shut up, Landon. Don't fucking whisper in my ear.
I'll say, especially after playing Shadow Generations, like how Shadow controls in that game. We'll talk more about that in an upcoming episode.
Whoa, spoiler!
But like, just going back to a game where like Sonic and friends are just sliding all over the damn place. It's like, wow. It's kind of good that the levels are designed, I guess, with the fact that they're going to slide around a bit in mind by constraining you so you can't slide too far away because there's nowhere to slide to, because this game would not control great if that was the case.
Basically, any Sonic game for a home console that was released after Sonic and Knuckles and before Sonic Unleashed.
Yeah, because I mean, Sonic Unleashed is flawed too, but like it still controls better than than everything before it.
Literally everything in that pool is like Donkey
Yeah.
Nut. That's the easiest way to describe it.
As far as
I don't think there's a better term for it.
As far as controls, I definitely agree. I mean, Sonic 06 for a different reason, because Sonic 06, like if it weren't for the fact that the game was a buggy mess, like the standard movement doesn't feel too bad. It's easy enough to control. I mean, Mach speed sections notwithstanding.
I was gonna say, Mach speed sections are asking for their money back.
I was gonna say, the Mach speed sections are honestly the worst offender of all of that.
Yeah, they are the slipperiest.
Like you, if you angle the stick 2 degrees to the side, that guy is going off at a 45-degree angle. He does not know what subtlety is.
If you look at the stick, he will turn 90 degrees.
And that's,
If you just so much as blow on it, he'll just spin in a circle for hours.
They say he's still stuck doing circles to this day.
amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, that is definitely a game that is, I mean, on arrival, that game didn't age, but like, especially the Mach sections are like something I would never
Oh
want
my
to play
God.
again, ever.
Yeah.
They're bad.
You want to speak of a section of that game that sucks? Silver and having to guide the balls in the pyramid.
But that was bad on arrival.
That was just
yeah.
bad.
That was.
But I just
that
thought
was
of it, and I was like, "Oh,
yeah. No, I mean it sucks.
my nuts hurt just thinking
It's-
of that.
It. Your donkey nut.
My donkey nut hurts."
It really is telling of like how frustrating that puzzle is. That it's like a viable solution to just glitch your way through the exit because
Yes.
it's way quicker.
Yeah.
Jack,
how
do you
about-
want to talk about every single Bethesda game ever made?
Oh, absolutely. But I
Okay.
mean, one could make the argument that they were bad on arrival, but I would say, okay, I'll use one particular game as an example. Fallout 3 is a game that when it came out, everyone loved. I played it like after the fact. Like I played Fallout 3 for the first time in 2012. And that was like 3.5 years after it came out. And I had a lot of fun with it. The thing is, everyone on the internet hates that game now and says that it's utter dog shit, and no one likes it. And looking back, I understand some of the things people have said about it in regards to the way I won't get into specifics just for the sake of spoilers, but like in terms of storytelling, in terms of like certain like choices that you make, and really just the overall amount of choices you have being kind of lackluster. Like it's literally just, hey, here's one side that's obviously the good guys and one side that's obviously the bad guys, where Fallout as a series is usually about like, there's different factions, but like no one is necessarily the best choice, and there's like ups and downs to no matter who you choose to side with. And that's reflected in Fallout New Vegas, which came out a couple years later and had generally like a much better story and more memorable characters and better writing. I think mostly because Obsidian is the one who did all the writing and story and not Bethesda, and that's why it's a better game. But yeah, I would say Fallout 3 is an example. Because like on arrival, like everyone loved Fallout 3. Like people were going nuts for that game when it first came out. Like I've even like I remember like early days of GameSpot, a lot of people were talking about it like, oh yeah, this is a game of the year contender with up there with like Metal Gear Solid 4 and shit. And nowadays people talk about it and they're like, that game sucks. No one likes that game. So I think that's, I mean, maybe not necessarily like an example of having like not aging the best, but like general reception towards it definitely soured over time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Before we get into, because I do want to talk more about like that angle, like games that like general reception was good and now like just kind of soured over time. Just to kind of like add to the conversation. But before we get to that, I think now is probably a good time to do our little housekeeping. So Landon can get up and go do whatever Landon does when he gets up. He's gonna do his Landon things.
Pick up a Tillamook product, most likely.
But we got a bunch of stuff going on. We are the Gaming Stooges after all. We've got this Twitch right here that we're streaming live. We've been doing a bunch of streams. I am streaming a game again. I'm
streaming a game. It's amazing.
I'm streaming Ape Escape 2. It won the poll. It was a tie break that Landon rolled a die for because it was a tie. But it came out on top with that die roll tiebreaker, and it's a fun time. I've been enjoying it. I'm already like a bunch of levels in. It probably won't be more than like 4 or 5 streams. It depends honestly on how long it takes for me to revisit all the levels to catch the extra monkeys after the main game is beaten the first time, and how much I want to do after like catching all of the monkeys if I want to do like other stuff. But that's been a fun time. Jack, you've been streaming Ace Attorney still, right?
Yeah, we are still doing Ace Attorney. It's we took the week off last week just for the holiday and just to take a break. Well, we were gonna do a stream on Tuesday, but I ended up getting sick, so I ended up canceling. But yeah, we are still doing Ace Attorney. If you're watching live, we got an Ace Attorney stream tomorrow at 9 p.m. Potentially earlier if Landon and I are both ready.
Which Ace Attorney is this again?
This is Dual Destinies. This is the 5th game. Excuse me, Jesus. I've been drinking up Coca-Cola the whole time. It's the 5th game in the main series. It's the 2nd game in the Apollo Justice trilogy. And we are in the middle of the 2nd case, which is I know I'm here to advertise the series, but it's not a very good case, and I don't like it very much. But we're still having fun because it's Ace Attorney. Yeah, so expect that tomorrow. Longer stream than usual because we only have one this week, and we're probably only gonna have one next week as well.
Yeah. So we've got those 2 games going on. Obviously, we've been doing this podcast every few weeks. We've got our YouTube where we export all of this. You can go to youtube.com/GamingStooges if you want to catch this. You might be watching this after the fact. Apparently our VODs do quite well over on YouTube when they go out. So if you're on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. We do export VODs from our Twitch, and if you want to tune in live, links are in the description of all of our stuff there. You can catch this podcast on our RSS, which goes out to Spotify and all those other platforms. We have a Patreon. We allow you guys to vote in polls to decide what our next content is going to be, like what games we're going to play next. We do a special exclusive video every month or twice a month, depending. Right now, this month, by the time this goes out to other platforms, there will be our Gen 4 Pokemon tier list where we rank all the Gen 4 Pokemon. And that went on for a really long time. Holy shit. It was almost 3 hours. I don't know how much editing I'll be able to get down to, but that's a big tier list. And it was longer than the podcast episode it's supposed to go with. So that's going to be interesting. But yeah, we've got that. We have 2 tiers you can subscribe to. Either you can subscribe to our Silver Stooge tier, where you get the access to vote in all of our polls, as well as, of course, just, special thank you from us with no like actual like specific naming. But if you subscribe to the $6 tier, not only do you get that exclusive video or 2 every month, but you also get a special shout out, and we have a special shout out for Pixel Vixen again. Round of applause.
Yay.
Yay.
Mint chocolate chip ice cream from Tillamook. Yay.
Pint of Tillamook.
Pint.
Wow.
Yay. Oh yeah, and Pixel. Yay. But mostly this. Yay.
Yay.
Was that middle finger on purpose?
Me pointing at this?
Oh. Yeah, but I was wondering if you did it on purpose with your middle finger.
No, I just pointed with a finger that was available.
Then that
They're
just
all there.
they just happened to be one that was there.
Listen, it's more convenient than pointing with my pinky.
I like to point with my pinky. When in doubt,
Yeah, but
pinky out.
But not at a thing of Tillamook.
Counterpoint, Cloud, the middle finger is the longest finger, and
Oh.
therefore
It is.
points the best.
Sure.
It does.
Well, I like to point with my pinky because I'm French and we like to put our pinkies out all the time.
I like to point with the shocker.
Oh. That one's for the viewers. That one's not for the podcast listeners. Whoa. Anyway, we are back with Landon having his Tillamook now. So,
Yes, now I'm sated. I have a question for Jack.
yes.
And this definitely ties into everything we're currently talking about, both bridging the conversation you wanted to go into and the conversation he was ending with. Do you think the internet will ever give the correct response to Skyrim, or will they continue to always like it?
That's a good question, honestly. I think it depends on if they put out Elder Scrolls 6. Like, if they put out Elder Scrolls 6 and it is like a much better product than Skyrim, then I think people will start to see in retrospect that Skyrim is an overrated pile of shit, to put it meanly. To put it nicely,
We can say much meaner words.
I could say much
Come
meaner,
on.
but I'm also trying to not be too mean.
Let's be as mean as possible.
I was going to say, Pixel brings up a good point in the chat. A lot of people that play Skyrim play with mods because there is actually a very like dedicated modding community to Skyrim, and like, you know what? Go for it. Make a bad game better. But like, she agrees that unmodded, it has not aged the best. And it's a game that is like, on arrival, was like universally adored, but is like riddled with like bugs and glitches, and like it doesn't really look that great, and the quests are all kind of boring, and yeah, I don't really like Skyrim, honestly. To be fair though, I've never been a huge fan of Skyrim, but that's just me.
Well, I want to bring up a specific game, and this is something that we've always talked about with this kind of lens. But there's a game that critics and people swear up and down and love.
Hold on. I love Al's comment.
I want
Folks,
Todd Howard.
Folks at home, I just want to, like, if you're listening to the audio only podcast version of this, I love you because I put in way too much work into editing these. But sometimes join us for the live chat where Al is always there, always making great comments, like today's comment.
Saying funny shit.
Today's comment.
I want Todd Howard to enter the chat and convince us all to purchase Skyrim. It's
beautiful.
It's never going to happen. Not Todd Howard entering the chat to convince us to buy Skyrim. I think that's going to happen. I just think I'm not going to buy it. That's all. So
I'm definitely not going to buy it.
Yeah.
Todd Howard can pee on my grave.
But the game I wanted to talk about that we've always been like somewhat critical of, that people adored when it came out, and I really don't think it's aged all that well, would be Sonic CD. Because that game...
Fuck that game. That
game, when it came out, I'm sure it was a really great game concept. The concept being really cool, where you could go back in time, forward in time. You could like alter the future if you like do certain things. But when you go back and play it now, the game's not terrible. The game's not even bad. It's just a mess. And I mean, it is mess. Because,
it is terrible. It is bad.
Because there's the set piece. So like when you play a platformer, there is what they call set pieces and, level layout design. And these ideas were like a good level is usually clean. It has a very cohesive vision. You can really piece together the segments of a level and understand like why they made it to like flow the way it does. Just none of that exists in Sonic CD, and like it not at least not nearly to the extent as literally all of the Genesis games that it plays like, because it's trying to balance being able to go to different time periods. It's trying to also balance that in the level design and like the set pieces. And then you have this like these weird instances of objects being in certain time periods that their placement just makes no sense. There's just no rhyme or reason to it, other than the fact that, oh, it also exists at another time period. And it makes the whole game just feel kind of like some kid had a level editor and just placed a bunch of shit everywhere. I fuck with the chaos, but it's still really just not as good as like the Genesis games for that reason, in my opinion.
You mean the collision chaos?
Not yeah. Yeah, true. I forgot that is in fact the name of a level. All of the names are alliterative too. The Palm Tree Panic, Collision Chaos, Tidal Tempest, Metallic Madness, etc., etc.
You didn't even mention Wacky Workbench.
Wacky Workbench. Quartz
I would
Quadrant.
argue that all of the 8-bit Sonic games have better level design than Sonic CD.
I don't know about Sonic Blast, but I would otherwise agree.
Yeah, I don't count Sonic Blast. Sonic Blast that's... When I say 8-bit Sonic games, I mean everything up to and including Sonic Triple Trouble. Anything released after that can die in a fire. AKA Sonic Blast can die in a fire.
Cool.
And if we're talking about... Folks, if you didn't know this, we're actually just a Sonic channel. We have been always. We're just called GamingStooges, so we can play other games sometimes. But we're actually just a Sonic channel.
We started as
going
a
back
Sonic
to
channel.
Sonic.
We will die as a Sonic channel.
Going back to Sonic, Sonic 1 8-bit has one of the worst design choices ever. And that is in boss fights, you don't get rings. They're all one hit and you're done.
Yep.
And also shout out to Sonic 1 8-bit for the first entire half of the game having almost the same aesthetic, and then also the last third of the game having almost the same aesthetic. Like
but I like that.
Because like the first, because you have, I mean, not saying the levels themselves are bad, because the level design is fine. As we were talking about, it's better than CD in my opinion. But like Green Hill, Bridge, and then Jungle Zone to a lesser extent, but not quite as much as Bridge and Green Hill Zone, look basically the same. And then you have the Scrap Brain and then Skybase or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are literally just the same zone aesthetically, just stretched into two zones. Because of how much of the game looks and feels the same aesthetically, I actually tend to forget that there's another level in the middle somewhere, and I don't even remember what it is. I know there's one. I know there's one level at least after Jungle and before Scrap Brain, and I just.
It's not Tidal Planet, is it? That's a Sonic Triple Trouble game.
I think that is not the Sonic 1 8-bit. But yeah, why don't you guys bring up some more stuff while I'm looking this up that hasn't aged well in that sort of sense? Because like I was saying, like Sonic CD, like the critics loved it, and like people at the time loved it, and there's some people that are super nostalgic for it, and I don't see it. Like it's fun, but like I don't see it the way they did. Some of them were literally saying it was like the best Sonic game ever at the time, and I'm like, how? Sonic 2 came out the year before.
Have you played other Sonic games?
And Sonic and Knuckles came out the year after. Like, how is CD better than both of them? I don't know.
Triple Trouble's there too. I like that game.
Triple Trouble is there.
Please
talk about Triple Trouble.
Please
talk about it.
Please like my game.
You know what game hasn't aged the best?
Don't
like
say it.
Steam's Quest, a super certain generic RPG.
Oh, I agree with that. I had to fix that game.
No wonder I forgot the other level, because it's literally just another level from Sonic 1, Labyrinth Zone.
Oh yeah.
I like to force myself to forget that one.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
What did you think I was gonna say, Landon?
Sonic Triple Trouble, because we were just literally talking about that.
Okay, no.
But Lexine's Quest definitely did not age well, like in any
Needed to be-
sense.
I
it
will
needed
say,
to be fixed.
I will say,
No. Don't say in any sense. The dialogue is hilarious.
I will say, bringing up the 8-bit Sonic games, this was kind of something that I'm sure was a criticism at the time, but it wasn't like such a problem that we see now. At like looking back, it's much a bigger deal. Is that basically any game from like a handheld system? Now, this is not a problem if you're playing the Master System versions of the Sonic games that have those versions, but on the Game Gear, it is a problem. Just screen crunch. Earlier portable games had such limited screen real estate, and that is a big ass deal for a lot of games, because some games are just not designed with this in mind, and it makes it quite a bit harder to play just because of that.
You know, a fun one. I literally just played this game, so spoilers to probably later in the podcast. Was Donkey Kong Land, where
Donkey Kong.
your character is like half the screen. Like the character's like sprite is like takes up at least a third of the screen, because they're using basically the same sprite work that was in the Super Nintendo Donkey Kong Country games, but on a Game Boy with original levels. And like they really have to compensate when they're in those levels. Like it is grotesque for like like what you actually can see versus like you can't even like hold down and like the camera won't pan down.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a shame.
So there is a bit of like blind jumping in that, and you just kind of have to hope.
That reminds me, I didn't play all of them, so I don't know how much better this gets over time. But that reminds me of the Game Boy Mega Man games, because Wily's Revenge, the first one, is really bad about that. Where like the sprite for Mega Man, same size as the NES sprite. Problem with that, the Game Boy screen and its resolution is not the same as the screen resolution for the NES. So you have all of this lack of space comparatively, and trying to jump from platform to platform. Like some of the platforms you just don't even really see until like you're already in midair jumping. It's pretty bad at times. Yeah.
There was also like a bit of an issue with Metroid 2, but I think
do remember that.
They sort of changed that. Like Metroid 2 versus Metroid 1 play different enough to where you don't have to worry about it, because Metroid 2 is not a fast-paced game, and it's mostly like it comes down to just fighting a Metroid. Like
it did feel like
Metroid.
more of like an adventuring through like the area, so to speak.
Yeah, but it's a little bit slower paced than your other Metroids, so it like makes up like lack of screen size. That one kind of compensates versus like some of these others where.
Would you say Metroid 1 or 2 aged better overall?
I personally think Metroid 2 aged better.
Okay.
But it also does not have the issue of Metroid 1 where it is copy paste areas. The issue is it's all black and white, so things still kind of look same-y.
Yeah.
But I think they do a better job like telling like where Metroids are and stuff. So like you can progress in that game slightly easier than you can in Metroid 1, where you just get lost. There's no like like Metroid 2 has like, if like you're gonna fight a evolved Metroid, there's usually like the skin carcass of the Metroid, like like before it evolved. So you like see that husk, and you're like, oh, if I keep going a little bit further down, there's a Metroid, so I'm gonna make progress. Versus like Metroid 1, I don't know what door to fucking open. There's 5 doors up this one vertical hallway. Where am I supposed to go?
Yeah.
It'd be like that.
Yeah.
Did you play anything like that, Jack, that was like really seriously hurting because of like just screen real estate? I'm sure there might have been like a Game Boy Advance game that like also, because even early Game Boy Advance games had a bit of this issue.
I feel like that's very much like a just like handheld gaming issue.
I think they solve it. They solve it in a lot of later Game Boy Advance games, and like by the time the DS rolls around, I don't feel like it happens quite as much anymore. But I'm sure that there's like some example that you can come up with that was like a Game Boy Advance game probably hasn't really aged all that well because looking back, like you just didn't have a wide enough scope.
I mean, I hate to just bring up Sonic Genesis again, but that's like the example of screen crunch.
Yeah.
See, folks, like, we are just a Sonic channel.
Yeah, honestly. But I mean, I genuinely can't really think of much else at the moment that
I will say even though I still like them overall, that I do think about, for the Game Boy Advance at least, the Spyro games that are on it. There's a couple others, but namely Season of Ice, Season of Flame, and Attack of the Rhinox. They have this like isometric view, but like you have a good chunk of the screen is just taken up by Spyro's sprite moving around. And while the later game, especially Attack of the Rhinox, it's kind of like made in a way where like it's designed so that you can still make out everything okay. Especially in Season of Ice, the perspective, the isometric view, they do not design the levels with that in mind, and so it can be fucking hard as hell to glide to where you need to go. Both because it could be a leap of faith, and also because you might have depth perception problems. So like, it's not a terrible game, but like going back to it, it's like I would probably rather not play it all the way through if I don't have to. Like I tried playing it a little bit recently and I was like, oh, this is okay. I remember why I didn't finish this game all the way, because there's aspects of it that I did not like. And I've beaten the Season of Flame and I've finished Attack of the Rhinox 100%. But Season of Ice? One last aspect of games not aging well that I want to talk about, that I think is worth talking about for a little bit before we do some catch up and sign off for the night, is series that, especially like when it comes to multiplayer series where you're meant to play with friends, and how the later into a series it gets, you have much more content to play with and chew on. And then the earlier games, even if they're mechanically sound, they just don't hit right because there's just not enough to play. A lot of that, and that's like a lot of games, like you've got racing games like kart racers, like earlier Mario Karts. They're just not as good because you just don't have as much to play as like, say, Mario Kart Wii or Mario Kart DS or Mario Kart 8 or 7. Like all of those have a lot more stuff you can play for like racers and tracks. Fighting games suffer from this a lot. Like if you go back to like pick up like Mortal Kombat 1 or Street Fighter 2, like the roster is so like fucking tiny and thin. Smash Brothers as well, compared to like later games in the series. The mechanics might not be quite as tuned, so it might feel a little clunkier, might like not as robust and like smooth to play. Like I think about that, like it, like you might want to go back to play as a novelty, but you wouldn't go back to play it seriously unless like you were like really nostalgia driven and had a group of people to play with that were as equally nostalgia driven about it. Like those are just, they all fall under like that same umbrella to me. And I'm sure, like, do you guys have any other examples, or did it pretty much just kind of hit the major ones?
I think you kind of covered a lot of the major ones. I'm honestly shocked it took us this long for any of us to bring up Mario Kart in this podcast.
Yeah. But I wanted to bring it up because, like,
podcast.
We did do a whole.
I know.
We did a whole podcast on Mario Kart. Shout out to that podcast where my voice started giving out about halfway in, and I sounded like a chain smoker. That was pretty bad. I had
probably because you chain smoke.
I don't, but
God, I'm trying to think of like a more specific example.
Say Super Mario Jamboree. That game has not aged the best.
that's the new one that just came out.
I played that the other day.
Yeah, but I lost that one game, so I hate it.
Jack, have you played any sports series that are like that, where like earlier games don't like quite hit as well?
All right, I'll say this can be seen as both a good and bad thing depending on who you ask. The early backyard sports titles did not have any affiliation with actual like sports leagues, like backyard baseball and backyard soccer, which I believe were the first two. The roster is a little empty without the pros, and content wise, especially the first backyard baseball game, there's only one field that you can play on, and there's at least like 10 in the game that that came out right after. So I guess I'd use that as an example. I'm trying to think of another. When it comes to Mario sports games, we kind of have the opposite problem of less content in the older games. The old games had more content than the modern ones do in some instances. Like with the fucking Strikers game that came out recently, like a couple years ago.
Oh, goodness.
Not really much going on in that game.
Mario Golf had a decent amount of content.
Oh no, Mario Golf on the Switch was good. I mean, like, for the most part, like, the golf was good, the tennis was good. I guess I'm mostly thinking in terms of like the middle era of Mario sports games, which I didn't bring up because they were bad on arrival and they hadn't aged the best. Shit like Mario Tennis Ultra Smash, which
I love that one.
I just don't even want to follow up that comment, honestly. I'm done with this podcast.
I love that game, Jack.
Do you? Do you love Mario Tennis Ultra Smash for the Nintendo Wii U, Landon?
I don't know, because I don't think I can play that game ever.
Do you
without
not
buying a copy. I don't think I own a physical copy. Let me check.
Okay. Do you want mine? I'll give it to you.
Sure.
I'm surprised he actually said sure.
I mean, it's a Wii U game.
True.
And according to Landon, that's almost never a bad thing.
Almost. I know of one bad Wii U game.
Landon is ride or die for the Wii U.
I know two bad Wii U games.
I knew it. I knew he was going to pull this shit.
What? What's the other one?
Oh, you know it. You love it. It's your favorite fucking game to play every goddamn year.
Oh, yeah, the letter.
Oh,
yes.
I forgot.
It's not every year.
Every goddamn year.
Yeah.
There was also the classic meme run.
God.
That was.
But Jack doesn't like that game.
I don't give a shit
because
about
he doesn't
that
play
game.
it every goddamn year.
I don't play the letter every goddamn year. When I played it this year, that was my first time playing it in 5 years.
That's still too often.
Landon, did you have any examples of game series where like there's like not as much content in like the older games, making it harder to go back to?
I own a copy of Ultra Smash, so you're good.
Okay.
You
Damn
can
it.
still send it to me. I'll frame it.
Frame it and put it on a wall.
You'll put a
Yeah.
plaque underneath, or you'll put it on a plaque and say Jack's copy of Mario Tennis Ultra Smash.
Yeah. Make sure. Yeah.
I'll sign it for you.
Thank you. Games. Here's here's an interesting one, I guess. Splatoon 1. Would we
Yeah.
say,
I was thinking about that actually.
because content wise, it doesn't have some of the like content from 2 and 3, but also I played the shit out of that game, and 2 I played some, and 3 I didn't play a whole lot of. So the content was because there was less different content, that the focused content of that game I ended up liking more.
Well, I was going to bring up specifically how like when Splatoon like first released, it was very like
Bare bones.
there was not much content at all.
It
There
was the barest of bones.
It was
it was
a concept of a game, and
It
then
was
and then it became
literally-
a game later.
honestly, considering what Splatoon 1 ended up becoming once they finished updating it, I'm kind of amazed that they released it in the state that it was in, just because it had one multiplayer game mode, Turf War, and 5 maps
Yeah.
that were on rotation.
Like looking back, launch Splatoon 1 definitely like it got away with the fact that it was a totally new concept for Nintendo to branch into, and it played well. But yeah, the
It
content,
also had a single player mode.
Yeah.
So you had more than that.
The single
content-wise,
player
but-
was also very bare bones. I mean,
Oh yes.
we did an LP. Go watch that LP, by the way. It was very short. There's not a lot of levels in that game. And 2 and 3 would end up having much longer and more fleshed out story modes.
But I would argue I finished the story mode for Splatoon 1.
That you did,
I have not-
Lennon. That you did.
I have not done the same thing for Splatoon 2 and 3. So, therefore,
I don't
has
even have
Splatoon
Splatoon
1
3.
has Splatoon 1 aged the best? No, you can't play it.
No,
So,
No.
you
No.
can't.
Not
I was
anymore.
gonna say, you can't even really play that game anymore. So like,
you can't play on Flounder Heights. What's the point of the series now? You can play on Flounder Heights in Splatoon 3, but it sucks,
why
It's
does it?
according to
different.
Jack.
Why does it?
Yeah,
It
suck?
doesn't
which
suck.
means-
It doesn't suck. It's just different.
That means it sucks. Don't sugarcoat it.
We talked about it. I think we talked about it in the sense of like an earlier part, but Katie did mention in the chat Donkey Kong 64 not aging well. I haven't played it, so I don't know what to say about that one.
I would argue that Donkey Kong 64 was received on arrival exactly the same as it is received now. Because, like, when Donkey Kong 64 came out, because that was what, like 2000, 2001?
Donkey Kong
Hold
60,
on.
was it really that late into the lifespan?
Okay, not quite. It was
I could have sworn.
okay.
What
It was November 22nd, 1999. So very, very late into 99.
okay.
And so like we already had like a frame of reference for what like a good 3D platformer looked like in the 5th generation of video game consoles. We already had Crash Bandicoot. We already had Spyro. We already had Mario 64. We already had Banjo-Kazooie. We already had like Gex and a lot of shit. Like, Donkey Kong 64 is not a bad game, but there is such an overwhelming amount of content in it that it makes me never want to play it, because there's like certain like collectibles that you can only get with certain characters, but the thing is that there's no easy way to switch between the characters without going to a character changing barrel and then switching to the character that you need and then walking back to the area that you need to go to. There is so much shit to do in that game, and like literally just the addition of like a character switcher button would make it 1,000 times better. So I guess to that note, like to that specific like part of Donkey Kong 64, has not aged the best, and like, but like at the same time, I feel like people recognized that as like a fault of the game on arrival.
Yeah,
But
true.
I don't know.
All right. Did we have any last words, or do we want to go ahead and just jump into catching up on what we've been up to the past couple weeks?
No. Lennon?
Bit Trip Runner difficulty curve did not age well.
Bit Trip Runner's difficulty curve was recognized when it came out.
Yeah, but
I
people
remember.
still love that game.
Yeah. Those people are wrong.
I know. I'm just saying.
Landon just wants to get on his soapbox so he can just be like, stop loving Bit Trip Runner. Stop it.
Like Bit Trip Runner 2 more, please. Thank you. This has been my TED Talk.
Okay. So, how have we all been doing? Up to anything new, Jack?
Nothing really lately. I'm looking at my calendar and seeing.
Say, how was your
Well,
Thanksgiving? Did you do anything for...
My Thanksgiving was good. I went over to my parents' house like I usually do, and you know, we had a nice dinner. It was very, very good turkey, good mashed potatoes, good green bean casserole, good fucking pumpkin pie. It was solid Thanksgiving meal. It was really good. And then Black Friday happened, and I worked that. I'm the only one of the three that worked Black Friday, and I feel like I don't know. I feel empty, is all. Yeah. All right. That's the end of the podcast. I guess I'm the only one left.
No.
Okay, bye.
Deuces, bitch.
Otherwise, I guess I posted it in the Discord, but I decorated my house for Christmas, which is something I've never decorated. Like, I've never like put up lights on my own before. I mean, I had Bethany help me, but like, I had never like done it on my own before because I always lived with people who would just do it.
That.
Like, because I lived with my parents for a while, and my dad would always put up the decorations, and then when I lived with my roommate Amber, she would put up all the Christmas decorations, and I'm just like, oh well, guess it's my turn. And I had a tree last year, but I didn't put up any like lights outside, and I decided, like, you know, me and Bethany, we went to Menards, we picked up some fucking Christmas lights and some hooks and shit, and it looks really nice. I'm honestly proud of myself.
Nice.
So, Christmas.
Cribbins.
We're already, if you're listening to this on the stream, on the, what the fuck?
Exports.
We'll exports. Say. The exports, the RSS.
Audacity, the Spotify, the Amazon, the Apple.
If you're listening to this as YouTube. A like audio only podcast after the fact, we're already like almost halfway into December. So hey, hope it hasn't been
happy December. The holiday season is upon us.
Try to take it easy.
Yeah. Anything else new? Really?
No. Pretty much it.
So let's see. I haven't been up to anything too major. I know I've been watching a little bit more anime with more of the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney anime. I'm like almost done the first season. I think I have like a few more episodes of the first season of that. It's been pretty good. I like the way that how faithful they recreate the cases from the games are. The first season goes through the first 2 games.
Yep.
So,
and then the second season is the third game.
Okay. Oh wow. The second season's just all the. Is that a bigger? Is that a shorter season overall, or is that? I don't know. The first season I know is like 20 something episodes, like 24, 26 or something. But I've been watching that. It's been pretty good. I like the English dub voice cast really like carries a lot of the entertainment value for that show for me. I've been watching more of Don to Don. As of this episode, I think I'm caught up with what was out. I think they might have put a new episode out that I haven't seen quite yet. I was 9 episodes in. They might have put out episode 10 already. Either way. So that's been really good. That I've been really enjoying that.
It says here that season 2 is 23 episodes.
Oh, geez. So it's about the same size as the first season.
Yeah. I think it does have some like anime original like plot points.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but because I've not watched the entire anime, so I don't know for sure.
Well,
but
I guess I will let you know when I watch it. You'll know because I'll say this is a case they're doing, and then Jack will be like, that doesn't sound familiar. What the fuck is that?
Yeah, probably.
But I've been doing that. I've been playing a lot of Pokemon. Just a bunch of different games. I've just been kind of like back on a Pokemon kick. I started collecting more of the physical copies of like side games that I haven't gotten yet. So I've been like going on eBay and like hunting down games for that. So building the collection up. I don't remember if I mentioned in the last episode, but yeah, I mentioned earlier in the podcast, been playing a little bit of Phantasy Star 2. Got to get back to it. Super grind heavy though. Literally today, I got gifts in the mail from somebody, and I started playing Dragon Quest XI S, and that game gets a thumbs up so far. I like the pacing. I like just how smooth and quick everything is, so I can like jump into battles. I like the camera controls, all the different like settings that you can have to really like make the presentation really nice. It's fun that there's like a 2D mode that you can switch to, although you do have to like set yourself back to a certain point. So I've got 2 different save files going on, so that one of those can be for that. But I like it so far. I like the game has like some aspects to it that I didn't expect to see. Like I didn't expect to be able to run ridiculously fast and jump. But you can run really fast and also jump in this game. So you've been able, so like they have like stuff that makes traversing the maps like so much more fun and fluid. So that's a lot of fun. I also did not expect that like skill tree that they have. So like you can like put points into like learning skills as you want. So that's been a cool thing to like be able to like pick and choose where I want to go with that. Kind of reminds me of like the Final Fantasy X Sphere Grid in a way, and a couple other games that do stuff like that. Like Dragon Ball Z Kakarot had something similar, just like skill trees. It's pretty neat to have.
The skill tree in Dragon Quest XI is phenomenal. It is a lot of fun, and get ready to break Eric when you can. I don't know how far you are. I don't even know if you've met him.
No.
Get ready to break Eric.
I was gonna say I have myself as a character so far. I do not have anybody else yet.
So when you get Eric, he will become stupid.
Awesome.
He's like your thief assassin character who uses dual blades.
He's the one in the opening movie, because I watched the opening movie, and I was like, oh, that guy that has the hair and he's got the fucking dual wielding shit. That guy looks badass.
He is stupid. He like because you can end up doing like 4 or 8 attacks on enemies, and like you can like add poison to every single hit. You can do stupid things with his skill tree. He is phenomenal. I love him.
Nice. Other than what I mentioned, nothing really new that I haven't already been doing to some degree. It's mostly just been kind of keeping up with that sort of thing. Oh, I didn't do anything for Thanksgiving, unfortunately. So my Thanksgiving was very uneventful. Besides, I did play, Allison and I played Wii Sports, and then we played a bunch of Wii Sports Resort, but not everything, because we got tired and we had a nap after, and then we never went back to play the rest of it. But there's a lot of games in Wii Sports Resort I did not realize. Like there's a lot you can do in Wii Sports Resort.
So, Wii Sports Resort fucking rules.
Yeah. But that was fun. trying to think. Yeah, that's pretty much been it. Just a lot of Pokemon binging, getting into Dragon Quest XI now, trying to play other RPGs that I've been playing, but like either they're too grindy or I just actually don't like them enough. Like Final Fantasy VIII, I've been trudging along. I'm trying to play it, but I just honestly don't care enough. It's something. Yeah, that's about it.
Brandon?
I wanted to mention I did end up making myself a nice big Thanksgiving meal though the day after Thanksgiving, so it was.
Hell yeah!
I have a picture of it in the Discord. I can post it again if you join the Discord and you give us the hashtag Cloud Black Friday meal. Don't actually use that. There's no point.
You just gotta post it and tag and just write hashtag Cloud Black Friday meal. You need to follow up on your own joke.
Oh God. All right. You know what? I'm going to do it right now. You want to join the Discord? It'll be like 9 days old, by the way.
Yeah. If you're listening to this the day the audio is released.
Yes.
Which is December 13th. Today's December 4th when we're recording this.
But yeah, Landon.
What's up, Landon?
What
you get
want
up
to know
to?
you want to know the newest thing with me?
I put it in the private chat. I didn't even put it in the general chat. I'm so stupid.
Genius.
I really am sometimes.
That is the genius behind GamingStooges in action, folks.
Yep. He's the brains behind our operation.
He's the one who does everything.
I am either genius or I am so unbelievably stupid, and there's no in between.
Yeah, that was the pure genius at work.
Yeah.
Just wait till he gets dumb.
Yeah.
You also, Cloud, you typed deal instead of meal.
God damn it.
It is a pretty good Black Friday deal.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Like we said, just wait till he starts acting dumb. Just you wait.
Just you wait.
Anyway, the newest thing with me is this bowl of spaghetti that is littered in Tillamook Kobe cheddar cheddar jack. It's cheddar jack cheese. I had to remember what it was.
Jack, what are you doing in Landon Spaghetti?
I'm hanging out, buddy. I'm hanging out with
spaghetti.
Tillamook. I sold out. I got a deal with Tillamook.
Oh, I'm proud of you.
Be in my bowl.
I hope you're making that big money.
I'm about to be eaten by Landon, so it doesn't really matter.
Delicious.
R.I.P. Jack. 07's in the chat for Jack.
Okay. Did I do it right?
I don't know. Did you?
08.
That was a year.
That was a year. Shout out to the year 2008.
Gaming wise, did Donkey Kong Land, was that?
Yeah.
That was not last podcast. I don't know. Things bleed together now at this point. Okay, so I played through. Chad seems active. Consider clipping this moment for GamingStooges.
wait, that's something that's said on the actual Twitch.
It alerted me because I'm viewing the actual as the GamingStooges channel, and
they're like, whoa, you got 3 comments in the span of 10 seconds.
Wow.
2 of them
you guys
are from
so good.
2 of them are from GamingStooges.
Good fucking job, asshole.
Yeah, good job, Twitch. Anyway, so played through Donkey Kong Land. Despite it being rough, I still had a good time, but I think most of that was use save states. About the same amount that we use save states for Donkey Kong Country when we were streaming those games.
Speaking of games that haven't aged the best, sometimes you just need a save state to get through.
That's true. Like basically every game. I wish every game had save states. It'd make my life easier.
Wouldn't it be awesome if life just had save states?
I wish life had
I
save states.
God, I wish.
So there's that, and yeah, because I guess I finished Shadow Generations after the podcast because I was still playing that. So I beat Shadow Generations. So now Jack has to beat it. He has very limited time.
I am playing it right now.
Please finish it soon.
I'm working on it.
And so I finished that. That's spoilers. And so now I'm back to Ys 10 because Cloud called me out and said I was a pussy ass bitch with a pussy ass dick.
Those were not my words, but
those were his exact words. Go check out the Discord. He said them.
I think I said something to the effect of, I think it's funny that you said Ys 10 Nordic was going to be taking up all your time and you wouldn't play Shadow Generations until after Ys 10 Nordic. And then Donkey Kong Land happened and the same thing happened. That's what I was saying.
Like he said, I'm a pussy ass dick with a pussy ass bitch. Wait. Flip that. So I'm back to Ys 10 Nordics. I'm in chapter 9. I put 40 hours of the game. Cut me some slack, baby. I'm very close to beating it. There's 10 chapters to the game.
It's a long game.
I'm loving this. Yeah. I mean, the Ys 10, the Ys games are short because they're action RPGs. So, like, they're whatever. But I'm doing, like, all of the side stuff because that's how you get, like, all of the character, like, all the juicy. That's where you get the juice, the meat, because you get to have fun. There's some, like, I am enjoying the combat in it a lot too, because they simplified a lot of it down to just having the two characters, so that helps a lot. I'm pretty sure I mentioned that in the last podcast, but anyway, like, fantastic, loving it. But as soon as that's done, as soon as I beat that, baby, Donkey Kong Land 2 and 3 better get their buttholes ready, because I'll blow through those.
He's gonna break their butts.
I'm gonna break your butt. And then Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake.
You've been streaming that. I forgot to mention that during the whole housekeeping segment, but that is also another game that's been streamed.
Jesus Christ. That game's good. I've been loving that. Yeah. We had a birthing class, because
that's right.
I have children on the way still. Weird.
Yeah.
But that's coming up. And then we went and saw the Wicked movie.
How was that?
You sound so excited about it.
It was definitely not for me. It was for...
It was for Kari.
It was definitely for her.
Guys, I don't know what this movie is.
Have you ever seen...
Have you seriously not heard of Wicked?
No, I haven't.
Really? It's been like everywhere, like marketing wise. I'm amazed you've been able to avoid it. But also it's based on...
That's what happens.
It's also just...
I would say that's what happens when you work backroom stock at a big retail store. You don't have to get plastered by all the fucking advertisements for it, and it's never come up on my phone because I'm sure my phone knows that I would not be interested in it.
I was gonna say it's, but it's also based on an original story.
Okay.
Not really.
Not based on. Well, actually, technically, no, it's not based on an original story. Based on a pre-existing story is what I meant to say.
So, Wicked is the Wicked movie is based off the Wicked musical, which is based off of the Wicked novel, which is a tie-in book to the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, okay. I remember hearing about it once or twice. I didn't really look into it.
It's about the Wicked Witch of the West and her origin story.
Okay.
I will say the book is way more badass because it goes into rape and other shit. She's like a freedom fighter.
It's a lot darker and grittier and really has more context involved.
Lennon's review of Wicked 2024. Meh. Not enough rape.
It's they toned down a lot of it.
I get what you mean.
One
I
for
know what
the
you
like
mean.
musical, because they turned it into a Broadway musical, and then
Yeah.
2 for the movie even more because it's a movie that's rated PG because they want
They like essentially like Disney-fied it, I guess you could say.
pretty much, yeah,
Yeah.
as much as they could.
Yeah.
The music was good, and I got very upset when the title screen showed up and it said Wicked Part 1, and I was like, oh no.
Yeah, it's part 1 of a
2.
2. I thought it was.
Yeah.
They're
I couldn't
doing
remember if it was 2 or
they're
3.
doing more than one movie for this.
They get to about the
Yep.
halfway point of the musical, and like if
Just call it
you
there.
read the synopsis of like the original book, they get to like the second paragraph of like a 6 paragraph
What?
of the original book. It's funny.
This sounds so weird.
2 hours and 40 minutes. My
Is
God.
it really
What?
that long?
It's 2 hours and 40 minutes.
That's stupid.
It's
That's so stupid.
Aye. Okay,
yeah.
sure.
So that's why it's not 3 parts, is because they're
They made
splitting the third part
so
into,
fucking long.
yeah. But you know, I'll go watch part 2.
Because Kari will probably make you.
Well, I'm nice.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, that was a very interesting thing to share. Thank you, Landon. And
I
thank
thought you
you,
guys would have
everyone
fun.
who has listened to this podcast. That was wicked cool of you.
Roll the outro.
Roll the outro. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
I don't even want to say goodbye after that fucking terrible pun.